Jamal Sadiq, who is the Executive Director of Oromia Global Forum. And we also have Dr. Trevor Truman, who is the Chair of Oromia Support Group. They will be delivering statements on contextualizing the cause of the Oromo exodus from Ethiopia, past and present, and the plight of Oromo refugees in Yemen. Jamal, if we could start with you.
All right, thank you so much. And I thank everybody for joining this press conference today. And I would like to thank also the coordinators, especially the young people who have been working very much for the success of this conference today, Hussam, Amal, Angatu, and also would like to thank Obo Gamada for connecting all of us. He was, I think, the initiator of all this communication. And I would like to thank our brothers from Yemen for showing the sympathy and empathy for the deceased Oromo refugees. Those who are burned up. And we feel very much sad about the incident. And I will give you just a context of why this is happening to Oromos outside of their country and what's going on in Oromia. Why are they fleeing their land? So I give you just a brief history of Oromo and Oromia. So maybe you can see it from the screen over here. The Oromo are the largest nation in the Horn of Africa, in Ethiopia, and they are the second largest in Africa at all, next to Hausa in Nigeria. The population size of the Oromo is between 45 to 50 million estimated. It is not correctly really counted. The Ethiopian government does never care about the Oromo. They make about estimately 40% of the Ethiopian population. They speak the language called Afan Oromo, and it is spoken in multiple of countries in the Horn of Africa, in Somalia, in Kenya, in Eritrea, and many other neighboring countries. The Oromos are following three religions, Waqfata, which is a traditional religion of the Oromo people, and they are Muslims and also Christians. They had their own system of government, which is called the Gada system, and with checks and balances for the equality of women, which is called an institution called Sinke. The Oromia is the largest region in Ethiopia, and it is endowed with natural resources. So there is a paradox to this, as you can see on my screen. The paradox is with its number being very big in size in Ethiopia, the population being the first in the Horn of Africa and probably second in the whole of Africa. The Oromos are suffering for a very long time. This started around during the scramble for Africa. So the then emperor of the Abyssinia has cooperated with the colonizers of Africa, and they get armed. So, and they colonized the Oromo and the rest of the people. So the main reason for the Oromo people suffering is historically it is recorded that Emperor Menelik of Abyssinia has collaborated with the colonizers of the scramble for Africa and obtained firearms, military advice, and finances. Ethiopia has been a dependent colonial state since then. The Ethiopian budget, 53% of the budget is coming from the West. So the country is completely dependent on what the donors are trying to do. So ever since Oromos have been trying to regain their freedom and the human dignity through national self-determination, they have not been able to make it so. So they have been struggling. Due to this struggle, they were forced to flee their land. So what you see in Yemen and all over the world, in Saudi Arabia, in Djibouti, in Somalia, in Kenya, you find every year thousands of new Oromo refugees are fleeing because of the persecution at their own home. They cannot live on their land. They don't have the right to speak their own language. They don't have the right to learn in their own language. So people are trying to demand their rightful places in their own home. So Finfinne or Addis Ababa is in the heart of Oromia. There are a lot of international institutions, but still when the Oromos are suffering, they don't have that much voice. So being the majority numerically, economically, politically, linguistically, culturally, they are among the marginalized communities within the Ethiopian empire. So this is the context for why the Oromos are fleeing and going to Yemen and other areas. for the last almost 100 years. So this is what we want the people of the world to understand. And we are very much thankful for the Yemeni people and the other peoples around Oromia and around the globe for supporting the Oromo refugees all along. And the incident that has taken place on the 7th of March, we understand is not really a hallmark of the Yemeni people, because there were so many Oromo pioneers, prominent Oromo political leaders who lived in Yemen, who has been supported by the people of Yemen, who took Yemen itself as their second home. So we see this incident as something that wrong must have been happening in Yemen, maybe in the last few years. We hope that this will change. And we just wanted to say, even though we are very much sad about the incident, we don't consider this as deeds of the Yemen people. We know that it doesn't represent them. And we would like to call on the organizations that are operating in Yemen, the UNHCR, the human rights, UN human rights branches, and international human rights organizations to push pressure on the local authorities so that people will get their justice or seek justice for the massacred Oromos. With this, I would like to conclude, and I will thank everybody for joining us today. And we will have some references for you on the website later on. And we will have also more cooperation, more collaboration with all the organizations which have been facilitating this. We are very much thankful to the organizers, the Yemeni organizations which joined us. We are very much thankful to the Oromo organizations which have been cooperating to make this successful. And thank you. With this, as I pass to Dr. Galato, he is going to give you the current context of the Oromo situation at home and also abroad. Thank you so much.
Okay, Trevor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're up.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I will not spend too much time thanking the sponsors because I realize time is so precious on this and at this event. My name is, but thank you very much all to say. My name is Trevor Truman. I'm chair of the Oromia support group. I speak on behalf of the organization in the UK and Australia, and other component organizations of the Oromia Human Rights Group, which are OMRO in Germany, Human Rights League for the Horn of Africa in Toronto, and Finfine, Addis Ababa, and Advocacy for Oromia in Australia. We are hugely grateful to the brave people of Yemen, who, despite civil war, famine, destitution, host hundreds of thousands of Oromo, Somali, and other refugees. We salute you, and we salute the human rights defenders who stand for truth among the chaos. Oba Jamal has given us a general introduction, and we'll take it from the end of the EPRDF era, which began to decline in 2016 because of the mounting pressure from Oromo youth demonstrators. The growth of the movement Kare in secondary schools, colleges, and universities became hugely influential. It was very well coordinated and organized, and in every situation peaceful. At the same time, Oromo media were growing from strength to strength, and the sacrifices of those demonstrating students, with up to 5,000 were killed on the streets or in house-to-house searches later. Those sacrifices caused the TPLF to lose power within the EPRDF, and they retreated back to Tigray. And this was especially when we were combined with Amhara students who started to join us in the demonstrations. And then Abiy Ahmed, with Oromo political backing and with his security and military know-how, took over the vacuum in the EPRDF when the TPLF basically withdrew to Tigray. But unfortunately, the former political dinosaurs, really, the people who held sway in Ethiopia for the preceding 150 years or so, they wanted to return to those days of Amhara hegemony, and they saw a promise of Abiy, and they backed him to the hilt. Unfortunately, Abiy seems to think that he is appointed by God. He's appeared in Pentecostal prayer meetings with senators in the USA, which declare him as divinely appointed Emperor of Ethiopia, which he believes to become a superpower. And this was revealed to him in a dream. The Oromo Liberation Front were welcomed back with absolute glee by the Oromo population in September 2018, when Abiy seemed to show openness to all of the previous opposition groups in Ethiopia. But the strength of the welcome given to the OLF in September 2018, with 5 million on the streets in Finfinne, in Addis Ababa, this scared many people. They did not want to see any reduction in the Amhara influence in Ethiopia, and were fearful of Oromo taking their undeniably correct place at the steering of Ethiopian politics. But after years of subjugation under the TPLF, there was an Amhara backlash of the old pan-Ethiopian dinosaurs or the Amhara nationalist dinosaurs. And we underestimated their strength, really. And there's a great push now to return to the winner-takes-all, zero-sum politics of previous administrations in Ethiopia. We saw this very obviously in November with the invasion of Tigray, which took the stand of holding an election despite orders by the federal government not to, ostensibly because of COVID, but also they were invaded because they disobeyed the instructions regarding the election, and also because they had hold of half of the military hardware of the federal government of Ethiopia. And so the federal government felt they had to invade Tigray before, well, to make a preemptive strike. And any opposition to this idea of one culture, one language, one history, one religion, Ethiopia, is met with bloody violence everywhere. It's not just in Tigray. We saw 100 Kimant killed in Amhara region in 2019. In Southern Nations, Nationalities and Peoples region, 150 Sidama killed in 2019, 50 Walaita killed in 2020. And in the border area of Amhara region and Benishangul Gumuz, thousands have been killed and displaced, another 329 in December and January recently. And we've seen violence and unrest and interethnic strife in Afar region, Somali region, all over. There is chaos, lack of rule of law, and insecurity. And until the invasion of Tigray, with its war crimes, mass rape, killings of refugees, and massacres of men, women, and children, before then, the brunt of violations carried out by Abiy Ahmed's regime were against the Oromo. I watched a video clip a few days ago of Tigrayan youths being casually searched by Ethiopian soldiers and then shot and pushed over a cliff edge. And government supporters say that Oromia is next. And this is what we're going.
حسام شوية شوية. حسام لو تترجم فقرة فقرة يعني.
Are you speaking to me, Tawfiq?
هو بيتكلم انجليزي يا استاذ توفيق، ما في داعي للترجمة.
أقصد تترجم 3 دقائق تعمل ترجمة مختصرة يعني.
اوكي هذا هو اوكي ان شاء الله.
Would you like to speak slowly, more slowly?
No, continue. You're good.
Okay.
He was just asking the moderators to if they could summarize this after you're done.
Thank you. Right. A military command post was set up across Oromia in the beginning of 2019 to systematically eliminate all support for opposition Oromo parties. Soldiers walking into homes, farms, shooting youngsters or taking them away to military camps where they're tortured to death or executed, bodies thrown in the bush. Youngsters are being taken out of police custody in prisons and shot dead. Boys and girls are being taken to military camps and gang raped. There's torture at a crude and more nasty level than under the EPRDF. We're seeing bodies mutilated in life and in death. There's worse regard for human life now than we've seen since the Red Terror in 1977, 1978. Under the TPLF, with the Oromo support group, over a 20-year period from 1992 to 2012, we documented 4,500 killings by the regime of Mela Zenawi. Under Abiy Ahmed, despite the media blackout, and not counting the atrocities in Tigray, in 2 years and 2 months, we've already recorded 1,700 deaths. So that's a third as many as occurred in 20 years under the previous regime. And so we're seeing more refugees. And the people who are committing these atrocities are the ones who are in control of the media. So we see media blaming the victims for the atrocities carried out against them. The Oromo icon, Hachalu Hundessa, was killed at the end of June in last year, and the OLF and Oromo Federalist Congress were blamed for that killing. Demonstrations, rightly, but then the people who were demonstrating were blamed for more killings and more violence and unrest. Even worse, the government killed Amhara settlers in Wolaga in order to vilify the Oromo Liberation Army. It's a volatile and unstable situation. There is civil war already and genocide looms on the horizon. There is hate speech from Amhara groups especially, accusing all the others in Ethiopia of hate speech against them. The only solution is to put human rights at the absolute top of everybody's agenda, politicians' agenda, above popularity, above wealth, influence, and politics. And I salute all individuals and organizations who are helping to make this happen. In Yemen, hundreds of thousands of Oromo refugees have been present before and during all of the above. Before the war, there were 250,000 recognized Somali refugees in addition. Even in the increase in the intensity of the civil war in 2015 didn't stop people fleeing persecution and economic hardship in Ethiopia to go to Yemen. And although over 100,000 left Yemen in 2016, 70,000 of these to the Middle East, there is still a lot of Oromo making the passage, the dangerous passage across the Red Sea to Yemen. The only thing that seems to have reduced this has been COVID, really. The civil war didn't stop 138,000 arriving in 2019. And COVID, however, has reduced the arrivals last year to 37,000. I presume the incident is going to be covered in depth by later speakers, but there is plenty more to say about what happened recently. But I must salute the agencies that have brought this conference together and the brave and wonderful people of Yemen who are helping to support those who need it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Trevor. We're going to bring it back to our moderators if they could summarize and move on to the next speaker. Arafat will be joining us shortly. She just finished doing an interview with some Arab news channel. She'll be joining us shortly.
حسام؟
المتحدث القادم من معنا بعدهم؟
المتحدث القادم هو الأخ رياض الدبعي، المدير التنفيذي لتحالف رصد، سيضعنا في صورة مسؤولية السلطة الأمر الواقع الحوثية والمنظمات الدولية في صنعاء حول توثيق هذه الانتهاكات ومسؤوليتهم القانونية والأخلاقية تجاه هذه الجريمة. الأخ رياض يتفضل.
شكرا جزيلا. تسمعنا؟ شكرا جزيلا أستاذ نبيل. تصحيح فقط، أنا مسؤول وحدة الرصد والتوثيق في تحالف رصد ولست المدير التنفيذي. المدير التنفيذي هو الأخ مطهر. في البداية شكرا لكم وشكرا لكل المنظمين واللي نسقوا واللي تابعوا واللي كان لهم الجهد الأكبر في أن نكون هنا حاضرين معكم. وفي البداية الرحمة لكل الذي توفوا في صنعاء، والشفاء العاجل للجرحى، وخالص التعازي لكل أخواننا الإثيوبيين. وما حصل لأخواننا الإثيوبيين في صنعاء وللأفارقة هي جريمة حرب بكل معاني الكلمة. كان هناك عمل ممنهج لهذه الحادثة. نحن في تحالف رصد وثقنا العديد من هذه الحالات، وتعرف أنه في صنعاء مسألة أنه المجتمع المدني أو المنظمات تعمل في رصد وتوثيق الانتهاكات هي عملية صعبة، بحكم أنه الحوثي لم يعد هناك مجتمع مدني، ولم يعد هناك إعلام، ولم يعد هناك صحافة في مناطقه. وراصدين بالإضافة إلى راصدين أعتقد أنه منظمات السامي يعملوا سرا في صنعاء. من خلال رصدنا وتوثيقنا لهذه الانتهاكات، ومن خلال معرفتنا بحكم أنه راصدين كانوا قريبين من الجريمة، كان هناك عمل ممنهج حيث تم إحراق واحد من الهناجر التي يأوي لأكثر من 450 من المهاجرين. كان هناك اعتصام من قبل المهاجرين، وبحسب المعلومات التي وردتنا من المهاجرين داخل اليمن، كان امامهم 3 خيارات: اما ان يدفع لهم مبالغ بسيطه وعليهم العوده الى عدن، او انه يتم دفع مبلغ من قبلهم ما يعادل 25,000 ريال يمني لتجديد ترخيصهم، او انه يذهبوا الى السجن او يذهبوا الى الجبهات. هذه المعلومات وهذه البيانات ايضا أنا استمعت إليها من خلال أحد الزملاء أيضا الصحفيين الذي موجودين خارج اليمن، الذي اتصل بأحد القيادات الحوثية، وكان هناك اتصال لمدة 1.5 ساعة، وهذا التسجيل مسجل، وعندنا نحن استعداد أن يقدم هذا الصحفي كشهادة في أي لجنة تحقيق قادمة، في أي لقاءات قادمة. إضافة إلى أنه كان هناك أيضا مشكلة حقيقية، هي صار المهاجرين بالوسط بين سلطات الأمر الواقع وبين منظمة الهجرة الدولية. منظمة الهجرة الدولية كانت هي أيضا على علم بأن هناك أكثر من 3,000 ولا مهاجر موجود داخل هذه الهناجر، وما زال حتى اللحظة وأنا أتكلم معكم هناك أكثر من 2,100 شخص ما زالوا محتجزين. هناك أكثر من اللي توفوا عدد أكثر من 64 شخص. هناك أكثر من 170 جريح، إضافة إلى جرحى آخرين حالتهم خطيرة، هم 200 جريح. الحوثيين منعوا كثير من المنظمات من الوصول من تقديم المساعدات والعون لهؤلاء الأشخاص. حصلنا أيضا على فواتير قدمت لمنظمة منظمة الهجرة الدولية. الحوثيين يطالبوها بدفع هذه المستحقات للمستشفيات. أيضا حصلنا على رصد وتوثيق من قبل راصدين بأنه العديد من الأخوة المهاجرين الذين خرجوا من المستشفيات تم إيداعهم إلى السجن مرة أخرى. ما زال الوضع سيء بالنسبة إلى للمهاجرين داخل مناطق سيطرة الحوثيين. يتحمل مسؤولية هؤلاء الأشخاص هم الحوثيين باعتبارهم سلطة أمر واقع موجودين في اليمن، بحكم أن اليمن دولة موقعة ومصادقة على اتفاقيات اللاجئين، ولديها التزام أخلاقي والتزام قانوني. هذا التوقيع وهذا التصديق أيضا يسري على مسألة على سلطة الأمر الواقع. مارس الحوثيين أبشع الانتهاكات بحق كل اليمنيين، من ضمنهم هؤلاء المهاجرين، لكن ما حدث للمهاجرين كان عمل ممنهج. تحدثنا إلى صحفيين كانوا بالقرب من هذه الحادثة. كان خلال اليومين اللي سبق الحرق كان هناك قصف لطيران التحالف العربي. أراد الحوثيين أو عملوا على إيعاز أو سربوا نوع من الكلام من الصحفيين بأنه يتم حرق هؤلاء الأشخاص، ومن ثم يتم استخدام إلصاق التهمة بالتحالف. نتحفظ نحن على أسماء الصحفيين، لكن إذا كانت هناك لجان تحقيق دولية، إذا كانت هناك لجان تحقيق محلية أو لجان تحقيق من المنظمات الدولية، هم على استعداد لإدلاء بشهاداتهم. تقدر ترجم يا
ممكن.
أستاذ؟
So Mr. Riyad is speaking on behalf of the RSWO coalition, which is one of the top monitoring groups of human rights violations in Yemen. And he's saying, according to the monitors that they have on the ground, first, obviously, he started by thanking everybody for joining, paying his deepest condolences to the families of the victims, and hoping for the full justice for everybody. What happened to our brothers and sisters is a war crime by all standards, the likes of which we have documented extensively on multiple occasions through RSWO. It's systematic and methodological. It's not the first time it happens. And if we don't stop it, it might not be the last. The refugees had three choices. The first one is to join the Houthis in their fight and on the battlegrounds, which has been done. And as we speak today, there are multiple and hundreds actually of refugees who are fighting with the Houthi forces in Ma'rib and in other cities of Yemen, or be given a small sum of money to be deported back to Aden. Or the third option was for the refugees to pay 25,000 riyals to have their status renewed. Obviously, an amount of money that the majority of them did not have. Refugees are right now at the mercy of the Houthis and the incompetence and indifference of the international organizations, the United Nations, the international migration organizations, and their likes. Until this very moment, thousands of refugees are still being imprisoned in terrible conditions. We have monitors on the ground as we speak who are willing to participate in any interview and are willing to participate in any future investigative effort. And the last point he mentioned is that some of the reporters have even reported that the Houthis were actually burning refugees or killing them and then blaming the Saudi-led coalition. And he's willing to share the names of these reporters with any interested. تفضل واصل.
بالنسبة للمنظمات الدولية أيضا الجانب الآخر للأسف المنظمات الدولية لم يرتقي خطاباتها، لم ترتقي بياناتها وتقاريرها وإدانتها لمستوى الحدث. يعني حتى الآن المفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان لم تكن بمستوى، لم تأخذ الأمور على محمل الجد. أيضا بعض المنظمات الموجودة زي فريق الخبراء، زي لجنة العقوبات، والأهم من ذلك أن المفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان حتى الآن لم تبدي أي جهد في مسألة كشف وتحقيق لهذه الحديثة. الآن ما يحدث أنه قام الحوثيين بدفن بحدود 43 شخص. هذه ليس، نحن في المجتمع المدني لا نعتبره هذا دفن للضحايا بقدر ما نعتبره هو دفن للجريمة. نعرف الكثير بأنه لا أحد في صنعاء يستطيع أنه يعمل مظاهرات. الحوثي لا يسمح بحرية التجمع السلمي ولا بحرية التظاهر السلمي، وبالتالي هو يمارس كل هذه القتل الممنهج في ظل الصمت الدولي لا أحد يستطيع إيقافه. الآن هناك الكثير من المهاجرين ما زالوا داخل السجون، وعلى سبيل ذلك هناك أكثر من سجين أو مئات السجناء داخل الحديدة. ما هو دور منظمة الهجرة الدولية؟ لماذا لم يتم عمل حل لهؤلاء الأشخاص قبل أن تطالهم أيضا الكارثة؟ هم أيضا معرضين مثل أخوانهم اللي موجودين في صنعاء. تفضل حسام. حسام موت أنت الميكروفون حقك.
He's saying that the statements that have been given out and decreed by the international organizations, the United Nations and the International Organization of Migrations have not been proportional to the magnitude of the atrocity, and that the numbers that the majority of them have reported, which is 43 victims and the mention of them being buried, is not, the burial of the 43 victims was not to honor the victims, but in fact to bury the atrocity and move on. The numbers that are given by these organizations who are under Houthi authorities are not recognized, and we call on the United Nations panel of experts and all the other organizations to form an independent team to investigate it further. تفضل.
أخيرا يجب أن يتحرك المجتمع الدولي، ويجب أن يكون هناك صوت واضح من المنظمات الدولية ويجب أن يكون هناك إدانة حقيقية تشير إلى الجهة التي ارتكبت هذا الجرم، ويجب أن يكون هناك لجان تحقيق دولية أو لجنة من المنظمات الأممية التي توجد مكاتبها داخل اليمن. لدينا في اليمن المفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان، ولديها اتفاقية دولية مع الحكومة اليمنية، وهي من أرقى الاتفاقيات بالشرق الأوسط. المفوضية السامية لديها راصدين في كل المحافظات اليمنية بما فيها تعز وعدن وكل المحافظات، وبالتالي هذه الحادثة هي تبعد عن مكتب المفوضية 4-5 كيلومترات، مش كثير. يجب على المفوضية السامية أن تقوم بدورها، وهذه دعوة المفوضية السامية، ويجب أيضا على فريق الخبراء أن يقوم بدوره وأن يدون هذه ويرصد ويوثق هذه الحادثة في تقريره القادم التي سيكون في سبتمبر 2021. أيضا على منظمة الهجرة الدولية أن تأخذ الأمور على محمل الجد، وأن تحاول تساعد هؤلاء الأشخاص وتقدم لهم يد العون والمساعدة، وأن تشير إلى هذه الجريمة بوضوح، والذي يتحملها جماعة الحوثي باعتبارهم سلطة أمر واقع، وهم من يدوروا هذه البلاد على الواقعات سيطرتهم. شكرا.
We call on the international community and the international non-governmental organizations, the United Nations and the the International Organization for Migration, to take this seriously and to take a serious stand and to condemn the people by name and to call things as they are, stop the sugarcoating and call out the Houthis, given that they are the de facto authority under which this horrific atrocity was committed, and to hold all those who were responsible accountable. And okay, we can go on to back to our moderators. We can bring on the next speaker.
Next speaker, ننتقل الآن إلى الأستاذ جمدة سوتي، مسؤول شبكة مستقبل أوروبا.
الصوت يا نبيل، صوتك.
ننتقل الآن إلى الأخ جمدة سوتي، الصحفي الإعلامي مسؤول شبكة روميا مستقبل أوروميا. هذا الصحفي اللي كان له دور في متابعة هذا الحدث منذ البداية، يحدثنا حول ردة فعل اليمنيين حول هذا الحادث، أو طوال أيام الحادثة كيف تفاعل الناس مع هذه الجريمة وأدانوها. تفضل أخ جمدة.
خلي الأخت أنغاتو تعرف عليه بسرعة باللغة الإنجليزية. Go ahead, أنغاتو.
Thank you. Yes, if I may just also introduce Gamada Suti Alarumi in English. So he's a journalist for Hegere News Network, and he will be speaking about the reaction and the role of Yemenis during this incident. So please go ahead, Suti Alarumi.
جمدة.
صوتك جمدة، صوتك.
لسه ما سامعينك أستاذ جمدة. Okay, wait, one more time.
Oh, I think he probably needs to be unmuted.
I just requested. Okay, we can hear you now. We should be able to hear you now.
أشكركم بدء على هذا المؤتمر الرائع بين الحقوقيين اليمنيين والأوروميين. كما تعلمون أن الكارثة وقعت في الجمهورية اليمنية يوم 7 مارس سنة 2021، وأول ما سمعنا لهذه الكارثة سارعنا وسارع بالاتصال بنا الأستاذ نبيل البخاري. أريد أن أشكره الشكر الجميل، هو الذي تعاون معنا لإبلاغ صوتنا للقنوات الفضائية الواجدة في العالم، وبعدها أستاذ توفيق والأستاذ حسام، أغلب الإعلاميين اليمنيين الذين لا أستطيع حصر أسمائهم تعاونوا معنا تعاونا بناء ومشرفا يشرف الاسم الشعب اليمني، وأريد أن أشكرهم باسمي وباسم الشعب الأورمو العظيم. وكما تعلمون بعد حصول هذه الكارثة بمساعدتكم استطعنا أن نبين للعالم مدى هذه الكارثة، والذين راحوا ضحية هذه الكارثة ليس لهم ذنب إلا كونهم أوروميين لاجئين في الجمهورية اليمنية، راحوا في هذه المحرقة الذي ليس لهم ذنب فيها. وفي هذه الساعة السفير اليمني في أثيوبيا الأستاذ يحيى الأرياني اتصل بنا هاتفيا وقدم تعازي للشعب الأورومو الإثيوبي، ووزارة الداخلية اليمنية ووزارة الخارجية كذلك أصدروا بيانا يشجبون فيه هذه الكارثة التي لا تمثل الشعب العربي اليمني. وكذلك وزارة الأوقاف اليمنية أصدرت بيانا وعممت على جميع مساجدها في الجمهورية اليمنية بأن يقيموا صلاة الغائب، وهذا الذي أثلج صدورنا كشعب الذي تعرض لفاجعة كبرى التي نعتبرها هولوكوست في هذا القرن 21 التي لم نسمع لها مثيلا في هذا العالم. وكما أشكر أستاذ حسام وأستاذ الأنسة والأستاذ الأنسة أمل التريبي، وكذلك أستاذ جمال غنمو، وكذلك أستاذ هنغاتو، والدكتور ترومان وأبا أورجي وغيرهم الذين لا يسعني المجال لذكر أسمائهم لإنجاح هذا المؤتمر العظيم الرائع الذي أود أن نتواصل لعقد مثل هذا المؤتمر مستقبلا لنبين مدى الترابط الأخوي بين الشعبين، الشعب اليمني والشعب الأورومو في القرن الإفريقي. وأشكركم شكرا الجزيل، ولا يسعني إلا أن أشكركم الشكر الجميل باسم إعلامي الشعب الأورومو، وشكرا جزيلا. شكرا أستاذ هنغاتو، وشكرا آنسة أمل وأستاذ حسام وجمال والدكتور ترومان وغيرهم.
لا شكرا على واجب أستاذ جمدة، وشكرا لكم. So Mr. Jamda was actually one of the first to break the news to the international media, and he is just, I would like to express my gratitude to the Yemeni community for their honorable reaction and for reaching out to the Oromo community to pay their condolences and to call for the formation of a coalition to bring global awareness and solidarity for the cause. We also appreciate the stance of the Yemeni legitimate government represented by their ambassador in Ethiopia and all the other ministers who reached out to us and paid their condolences and issued statements condemning the acts that do not represent Yemen as a country or Yemen as a people, and those who were responsible, the de facto Houthi authorities in Sana'a. We also appreciate all the organizers, and he mentioned everybody by name. We're Mr. Jamal, Angatu, Tawfiq, Nabil al-Bukairi, and all the other organizers, and we call on you to stay with us and get involved in this coalition to keep raising awareness and bringing justice to the victims. I believe next, we're bringing it back to the moderators. They should be more aware of this.
الآن ننتقل إلى المتحدث التالي، وهي الأستاذة عرفات جبريل. والأستاذة عرفات هي محامية وناشطة حقوقية وصحفية أيضا في شبكة مستقبل أوروميا، وهي كانت للأمانة كانت أول من وضعتنا في صورة الحادثة. أنا أول من تواصلت بها، وكانت هي خيط الوصل بين كثير من الناشطين الآن على كل مستويات اليمنية والأثيوبية والدولية. فتتفضل أستاذ عرفات لإلقاء مداخلتها.
If I may just quickly introduce Arafat in English as well. So Arafat is a lawyer, human rights activist and journalist for Hagera News Network, and she will be giving us on-the-ground sources and source statements and witness accounts. So please go ahead, Arafat.
الصوت أخت عرفات.
Arafat, I'm inviting you to unmute. Okay.
بسم الله. تسمعوني الآن؟ ألو، تسمعوني؟
سامعينك.
بسم الله. أولاً أتقدم بالشكر لكل المتواجدين في هذا المؤتمر، وعلى رأسهم منظمة سام وجمعيات الأورومو وكل صحفي متواجد في هذه المنصة. طبعا حصل في تاريخ 7 يوم الأحد تاريخ 7 من هذا الشهر بعد الظهر داخل السجن الجوازات مصلحة الهجرة والجوازات في صنعاء تم إلقاء قنبلتين على مجموعة من المحتجزين داخل السجن. واللي قاموا بإلقاء القنبلة هم كانوا حوثيين. طبعا إحدى القنبلة هذه كانت مسيلة للدموع والثانية هي القاتلة. والسبب الإلقاء عليهم هذه القنبلة هم أن المحتجزين عملوا إضراب عن الطعام وطلبوا ترحيلهم إلى بلادهم، وذلك لأن يعني قالوا إحنا ما عندنا لا توجد لدينا مبالغ ندفعها لكم، أو إحنا لا إحنا قادرين للذهاب إلى الجبهات. وبعدها عملوا الإضراب تماما، يعني رفضوا الأكل وتشاجروا الحراس مع المحتجزين داخل، اتشاجروا، بدأت المناوشات بيناتهم. وبالتالي المحتجزين كانوا قالوا للعساكر الحوثيين إحنا لدينا متحدثين باسمنا، إحنا ما نقدرش. لما كان يضربوهم يعني الحوثيين بدأوا بالضرب المحتجزين، قالوا إحنا لدينا متحدثين، شخصين متحدثين عننا يتكلموا معاكم، وقاموا بإخراج الشخصين هذا من الهنجر إلى خارج. والمتحدثين هذا تم إبلاغ المطالب اللاجئين والمهاجرين الموجودين داخل الهنجر، وبعدها قاموا بالتشاجر مع المتحدثين مع العساكر الحوثيين، وبعدها قاموا بإطلاق الرصاص على هؤلاء المتحدثين أمام عين المحتجزين. والمحتجزين طبعا أثاروا غضب، هذا الشيء أثار غضبهم، وبالتالي قاموا بالاحتجاج أكثر، والعساكر قاموا بخروج من المكان إلى الخارج، وتم طلب قوات ثانية والدخول إلى السجن. وطبعا القوات الثانية هي كل القوات هي يعني حوثية. القوات الثانية أجت وقامت برمي قنبلتين على المحتجزين اللي داخل السجن. والقنبلتين هذه، القنبلة الأولى هي كانت مسيلة للدموع، والثانية هي اللي قامت طبعا بقتل المحتجزين هذا. والمحتجزين اللي داخل اللي موجودين كانوا في الهنجر هذاك الوقت ما يقارب تقريبا 500 شخص، وهذا بشهادة اللي نجوا من المكان. طبعا بعدها تم أخذ المصابين. لما اندلعت النيران في المكان وصار المكان يعني خارج سيطرتهم، قاموا باتصال على سيارة الإسعاف والمطافي أجت وقاموا بكسر الجدار الموجود في الهنجر، وهذا الشيء مبين عندكم بالصورة، يعني في صور بهذا الشيء ومبين. وبعدها قاموا بإخراج الموجودين داخل الهنجر، واللي صاروا يعني مش في الأغلب اتفحموا، صاروا جثث واتفحموا في المكان، بس كان في بعض الناجين منهم وخرجوا من المكان، والبقية وبقية العنابر خرجوهم من المكان أسعفوا الناس إلى المستشفى الثورة والمستشفى الجمهوري كمبدئيا يعني. وبعدها في المكان كله حوطت الميليشيات على أساس إنهم لا يتم تسوير ولا توثيق أي حاجة تماما، وتم أخذ الإصدار وأخذ الجوالات من اللي موجودين داخل، وقاموا بالتسوير هذا. وطبعا بصعوبة جدا جدا وصلتنا الصور هذيك الجثث المتفحمة وهذيك الصور اللي من البداية صوروا وخرجوا ورا سيارة الإسعاف عشان إنهم اتجهوا إلى المستشفى. وداخل المستشفى طبعا في المستشفى كمان قاموا بإخراج كل اللي موجودين العاملين النظافة اللي موجودين من اللاجئين في الأقسام، بحيث إنهم يعني متخوفين، كانوا متخوفين إنهم بيقوموا بتصوير الجريمة وتوثيق الحالات، عشان كذا قاموا بإخراجهم تماما وعدم إدخال أي شخص لاجئ، أي شخص يعني من بوابة المستشفى، أي شخص أسمر إنه سواء كان صومالي أو أثيوبي أيا كان يعني إلا ببطاقة يمنية كانوا بيدخلوهم، لأن أصلا كان في إزعاج في المكان، وكان الجماعة طبعا اللاجئين كلهم يعني اتجهوا للمستشفيات عشان يشوفوا من هم الجرحى ومن اللي ماتوا في المكان. طبعا الآن إحنا المشكلة هي المتواجدين في نفس المكان، المحروقين كانوا، الصور اللي المتفحمة هذه أين صارت وكيف تم دفنها ما حد عارف، ما حد عارف لا من المنظمات ولا من اللاجئين ولا من أي حد، يعني كيف تم دفن هذه الصور. أما الأعداد اللي هم جالسين يقولوا إن 43 شخص اللي توفوا، هذه الأعداد اللي تم إسعافها داخل المستشفى وفيما بعد توفت، والأعداد ما زالت تتزايد يوميا، يعني بدليل إنه كان في يوم السبت تم دفن 30 جثة. في شخص شاهد عيان شاف الواقعة طبعا أخذوا عليه جواله وهددوه، قالوا إنه إذا اتكلمت أنت في هذا الموضوع بتصير لك هذا الموضوع موضوع كارثة، يعني لا تتكلم ولا تبلغ حد. ألو سمعني؟
نعم استمري.
معكم مايك.
أيوة. طبعا بعدها داخل المستشفى لما تم إسعاف الجرحى إلى المستشفى الجمهوري ومستشفى الثورة، تم اللي جروحهم طفيفة تم إخراجهم فعلا من داخل المستشفى وإعطائهم 100,000 يمني، 100,000 يمني إعطاء لكل واحد منهم على أساس إنهم يدعوا ويقولوا هذه اللي حصل كان من قبل قصف، يعني كان في قصف، والقصف إحنا مش عارفين، أكيد السعودية هي اللي قصفتنا بسبب هذا الشيء حصل لنا اللي حصل. أما إنه الحوثي ما ارتكب، كأنه هو ما ارتكبش حاجة يعني. وبعدها إنه في بقى هذا الشباب طبعا تم تهديدهم وسافروا وخرجوا من داخل المستشفى إلى عدن، في بعدهم ساروا عدن، في بعدهم ساروا رداع، في بعدهم لا حد عارف عنهم إلى أين اتجهوا. وفي نفس اليوم، في نفس الليلة، نفس اليوم الحادثة في الليلة، طبعا تم أخذ شاحنتين من داخل السجن المركزي لفين تم ترحيلهم، ما حد داري عنهم للآن، إلى فين تم إلقائهم، يعني إلى فين تم ترحيلهم، فين ودوهم ما حد عارف للآن. والجدير في الموضوع إنه كان في نساء في الحجز قبل الحادثة، كان في 180 نساء، 180 امرأة، وطبعا 30 طفل داخل المكان. وتم أخذ 30 الامرأة، 180 الامرأة و30 الطفل إلى مكان ما حد يدري عنهم قبل الحادثة بيومين. وفي يوم الحادثة فعلا كان في امرأة مع طفلها الرضيع وقاصرة وثانية قاصرة عمرها 15 سنة، وهم الآن متواجدات داخل صنعاء وخايفات يعني، وحالتهم الصحية والنفسية مدهورة فعلا من هول ما رأوا.
واحدة ما تتحدثش يعني، واحدة أصيبت بالصدمة ما تنطقش.
أيوة اللي هي القاصرة هذه أصيبت بالصدمة ما تتحدث. الثانية اللي عندها طفل الرضيع هي اللي اتجاوبت معانا حتى، أما الثانية هذه لا تتحدث نهائيا وخايفة وترتجف. وهذا هو اللي صار في داخل السجن الجوازات. وإحنا كلاجئين يعني نشكر فعلا الجهود الحكومة الشرعية، وكما إن إحنا نطلب من المجتمع الدولي التدخل والمحاسبة الجناة بهذه الجريمة البشعة اللي ضد الإنسانية، وعلاج الجرحى المتواجدين. طبعا الجرحى المتواجدين داخل المستشفيات علاجهم مش لاقين علاج، هذاك العلاج يليق فيهم. وطبعا في صور، في ناس تفحمت وجوههم ومحتاجين لعشرات العمليات الجراحية. وكما احنا كما نطالب المفوضية السامية لشؤون اللاجئين عمل حل جذري للاجئين المتواجدين داخل اليمن، بسبب انه حياتهم يعني بادت خطيرة جدا، وما حد قادر يعيش داخل اليمن بهذا الشكل يعني. ونطالب من منظمة الهجرة الدولية، حيث انها هي الوحيدة اللي تقدر تفيدنا بالأسماء والأعداد المتواجدين في يوم الحادثة في المكان، وهي ما زالت يعني للآن مش ما تتجاوبش مع أيا كان الشخص. يعني في ناس يطالبوا بهذا الشيء، في ناس أهاليهم مثلا، إحنا في ناس بدأوا يتواصلوا معنا وقالوا كان آخر مرة ابني ولا زوجي كان داخل السجن، اتصل علي وهو داخل السجن صنعاء، بس الآن أنا مش عارفة يعني فين هو، هل هو داخل السجن، ما زال داخل السجن، ولا هل هو من المتفحمين جثتهم، ولا فين هو، ما حد عارفين، احنا مش عارفين. عشان كذا احنا نطالب المنظمة الهجرة الدولية التعاون معنا، كونها هي اللي من لديها السجلات والأسماء الأموات والمجهولين. وشكرا.
Thank you very much, Arafat. I will be translating the portion. It's very traumatizing. I'm going to try my best to not lose it. So she started by saying that on Sunday, the 3rd of March in the afternoon, inside the holding facility of the Immigration and Passports Authority in the Khawlan Street in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, which is under the de facto rule of the Houthis, also known as Ansar Allah, after 2 incendiary bombs were thrown into a crowd who were protesting after having been on a hunger strike for days. The Houthis were demanding that these refugees pay 70,000 riyals. And so the refugees were asking to be deported back to their countries. After an altercation between the refugees and the security guards, the refugees brought forth 2 people to negotiate with the security forces on their behalf. And the security forces proceeded to kill those 2 negotiators in front of the crowd, which obviously made them angry and they became uncontrollable. So the Houthis called for backup from outside. The backup came and right away they threw 2 bombs. One of them was a tear gas bomb and the other one was an incendiary bomb into a closed, overcrowded hangar with more than 500 people. Given that its capacity, it was only limited to 100 people. It was overcrowded, according to the IOM, to 3 times its capacity. A lot of the people who were there, their bodies were burned beyond recognition. The hangar was closed and it contained an easily inflammable mattresses, which made the fire even more inflamed. That's why the fire was caught up to the whole building. After the team of makeshift fighters arrived at the scene, they broke the wall and they started transporting the immolation victims to public hospitals. The phones of the survivors were confiscated and they were threatened to not say a word. Houthi militias instantly surrounded the facility where the atrocity was committed, and they were given, like, groups of Houthi militias were scattered at the hospitals to guard them. And as more precautionary measures, they even kicked out the janitors of the hospitals who were also refugees to prevent any leaks from happening. Hundreds of refugees, again, were burned beyond recognition and obviously died at the scene. And the figure that we see, 43, in all these international organizations, the United Nations and the International Migration for Migration, are the number of those who were transported to the hospitals and died at the hospitals. These numbers do not include the numbers of the people who died at the scene. And the number 43 keeps increasing by the day. According to eyewitness news accounts, 30 corpses were buried on Saturday. The phones of everyone were confiscated and they were threatened that they will be taken behind the sun with their families, which is basically, it's a direct death threat. On the day of the atrocity at midnight, 2 trailers of refugees were transferred to an unknown place. Those who did not die at the scene were transported to the hospital and they were given a 100,000 riyals hush money. And they obviously were placed on a registry and they were made to sign a pledge to not only keep silent, but to claim and to say to anybody that asked them about it that the facility was hit by a Saudi airstrike. Some of the survivors have escaped to Aden, some of them out in Rada', and the others escaped to other places out of fear and trauma. Inside the facility, there were more than 180 women and 30 children who were luckily transferred outside of the facility 2 days before the atrocity, with the exception of 2 women and a baby. One of them was the mother of a baby, and the other, it was a 15-year-old girl who was in the facility during the burning. Till this very day, they are in Sana'a, and the mother is extremely traumatized. The 15-year-old girl has lost her ability to speak. She's been having panic attacks, and she's obviously in a terrible condition, and she is in dire need of immediate care. She ended by saying, "We thank the Yemeni community for their stance, and we appreciate and we would like to express our gratitude to the legitimate government and their statements. We call on the international community to provide immediate care for the victims who are in Sana'a today, as the hospitals do not have the ability to provide the necessary care, either physical or mental. And we call on the International Organization for Migration to find an immediate solution for Oromo and all the refugees in Yemen. We also demand that the international community, the International Organization for Migration, immediately release the names of the victims who were burned and the names of the victims who are still alive in hospitals." Back to our moderators.
شكرا حسام. ننتقل إلى عنقاتو تدير بقية الجلسة.
Thank you, Nabil, and thank you, Arafat Jibril, for that heartbreaking recounting of what happened. And thank you, Hassan, for the translation. Our next speaker is Baqattoota, a member of the Oromo Canadian community, who will be providing a reaction and also solidarity from the international Oromo community. Baqattoota, please go ahead. I will invite you to unmute.
تفضل.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much again. First of all, I would like to thank SAM for Rights and Liberties and the Oromia Global Forum for organizing this press conference. Also, my deepest gratitude goes to our Yemeni brothers and sisters for showing sympathy for the atrocities committed against the Oromo refugees in Sana'a. Members of the Oromo communities in Canada are shocked and devastated by the news they heard from Sana'a, Yemen on Sunday, March 7, 2001. According to the news, about 450 refugees lost their lives and more than 1,500 injured while they were in detention under the Houthi authorities. These refugees and thousands more have been rounded up from the streets without any reason. UNHCR, the organization that's supposed to protect them, has neither protected them from being arrested nor freed them from jail. After the incident, the number of dead and injured were reduced by as much as 8 and 170 without any investigation. On the 12th of March, 43 bodies were displayed and buried by the Houthis, the number very far from truth. Twisting the facts to minimize the death toll added an insult to injury. There are more than 20,000 Oromo refugees in Yemen. Many have been there for years and have formed families. In a country immersed in internal and external war, the fate of these refugees is in limbo. The tragedy is having a devastating psychological impact, not only on the adults, but also on their children. Since March 8, 2011, thousands of refugees are demonstrating outside the office of the UNHCR in Sana'a, demanding a thorough investigation of the massacre and bringing those responsible to justice. We, the Oromo Canadian communities, also call on the UNHCR and the IMO to give urgent attention to the tragedy, to immediately address their demands and facilitate third country resettlement for all the refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abaoji, for sharing that with us. And I will now hand over to Jamal Sadiq again, the Executive Director of Oromia Global Forum, to provide us with the list of demands from the organizers of this conference, and to provide a closing statement. Jamal, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Angatu, and the rest of you. And I'm going to read the statement, the joint statement by all of us in this room, especially the organizing human rights organizations from Yemen and Oromo. Joint statement by Oromo and Yemen human rights organizations and civic institutions. The subject is demanding justice for the massacred Oromo refugees in Yemen. Date, March 16, 2021. We, the undersigned Oromo and the Yemen human rights organizations and civic institutions, have held a joint press conference on March 16, 2021. The purpose of the conference is to exchange information and raise awareness about the atrocities committed against the Oromo and other refugees in Yemen, Sana'a. We, the participants of the conference, have learned that historically very positive relationship exists between the Oromo nation and the people of Yemen. As the result, many pioneers, prominent leaders of the Oromo and Oromo martyrs such as Elemok Elto have found safety and protection among the people of Yemen and lived in Yemen as their second home. While thanking the people of Yemen for their long-held friendship and hospitality, we, the participants of this press conference, unanimously express our outrage and utmost sorrow in condemning in strongest term possible the inhuman act of the burning of Oromo refugees alive in Yemen, Sana'a, in a detention center that is controlled by the Houthi militia. The horrifying massacre has taken place on Sunday, March 7, 2021. According to the IOM, at least 41 Oromo refugees died at the scene. 170 were seriously injured and taken to the hospital in Sana'a. Later on, different reports from different local and international sources claim that over 400 Oromo refugees were massacred and over 500 were severely wounded. One immigrant survivor reported, "I had 6 bodies on top of me. Then I passed out. And then I don't wake up until I came in the hospital. I came back from the dead, and so far I feel like my whole body is dead from the condition I have been through." We believe an independent investigation is needed to ensure the correct numbers. Furthermore, while offering our condolences to the families of the victims, the relatives, and the Oromo nation at large, we call upon all local authorities in Yemen to immediately cease hostilities against Oromo and other refugees, release all Oromo and other refugees who are held in detention centers, provide them with the safety, the protection, and the humanitarian assistance they seek responsibly. 2, we call up on the UN Human Rights Commissioner for Human Rights to conduct credible, independent, and transparent investigations to identify and hold the perpetrators accountable and seek justice for the massacred Oromo refugees. 3, we call up on the IOM to open a hotline or a channel for Oromo refugees to contact international organizations and file their complaints to ensure their safety. We also demand the IOM to disclose the names of the massacred, the dead, the injured, whom they have already reported somehow. 5, we call up on the UNHCR to resettle Oromo refugees in third countries where their safety and protection can be safeguarded in collaboration with Oromo communities around the globe. In solidarity, we stand. The signatories are Oromia Global Forum, SAM for Rights and Liberties, Oromia Support Group, Bridge for Yemen, Union of Oromo Communities in Canada, RASD Coalition Yemen, Oromo Relief Association in UK, Human Shields, Oromo Human Rights and Relief Organization, Peace Track Initiative, Oromia Human Rights Group, and the Global Oromo Communities Association. We thank everybody for taking your time and for showing your solidarity and sympathy to the Oromo nation at large. And we thank our Yemeni brothers who have coordinated this conference with us, and we will keep in touch, and we will have a very solid coalition that will stand for the right of the people all over the world. Again, we would like to underline that millions of Oromos are all over the world seeking your help, and we also pass the message to the international community at large to stand with the Oromo refugees who are in their countries, in many, many countries in the Horn of Africa, as well as other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamal, the head of the Global Oromo Forum. So I will just translate briefly the demands, and then we go into open 2 questions for the reporters in the crowd. So المطالب هي دعوة مفوض الأمم المتحدة السامي لحقوق الإنسان للتحقيق ومحاسبة الجناه وتوفير السلامة للاجئين في اليمن، دعوة المنظمة الدولية للهجرة لفتح خط ساخن، قناة للاجئين الأورومو للاتصال بالمنظمات الدولية وتقديم شكاواهم بصورة تضمن سلامتهم، دعوة جميع السلطات في اليمن، سلطات الأمر الواقع، إلى الإفراج الفوري عن الأورومو وجميع اللاجئين المحتجزين في مراكز الاحتجاز المعروفة وغير المعروفة، دعوة المنظمة الدولية للهجرة والمفوضية بالتعاون مع مجتمع الأورومو حول العالم لإعادة توطين اللاجئين الأورومو في بلدان ثالثة. If we could open up the questions, we have one person raising their hands. Mr. Arafat Hamran, I will ask you to unmute, and we will have one more question and then close, inshallah. تفضل.
السلام عليكم. طبعا يعني تشبيك جيد عمل هذه المؤتمر لحفظ حقوق الضحايا، وأيضا من أجل مناصرة أولئك الذين راحوا في هذه المحرقة. حقيقة لم يعد لدي وقت، فكنت أريد أن أتكلم سريعا لأنه عندي البطارية ستنتهي. ويعني خلاصة الموضوع، ما هي الخطوة القادمة التي ممكن أن نعملها من أجل أولئك الأثيوبيين؟ أعتقد أن هناك شيء مهم جدا يجب أن نقوله، أن لا بد من دخول المنظمات الأممية، هي المعنية بالتحقيق وأيضا المعنية بكثير من تفسير كثير من بما يدور حول هذه الجريمة. لذلك أرى أنه كتوصية في هذا المؤتمر أن يكون هناك يعني بيان واضح يعني يحشد فيه كثير من المنظمات اليمنية والإثيوبية وغيرها، تطالب بالتنديد بهذه الجريمة، وأيضا تطالب المفوضية السامية وأيضا المبعوث الأممي أيضا لابد أن يتحرك أو أن يصرح، وفريق الخبراء، وأن نبتعد كثيرا عن مطالبة لجنة تحقيق دولية، لأن هذه اللجنة دائما ما تأتي في أوقات متأخرة وربما تحتاج إلى عام كامل، ويعني في لبنان وفي كثير من البلدان لم تعمل شيء إيجابي. أضف إلى ذلك أن لدينا آليات كثيرة في اليمن وتتبع الأمم المتحدة. لذلك أنا أرى أنه يعني الخطوة القادمة أن نركز على قضية دخول المنظمات الأممية، يكون لديها دور واضح والضغط في هذا الطريق من أجل وصول فريق خبراء تحريك المفوضية السامية، أيضا المبعوث الأممي أن يخرج من صمته كونها وقعت في نطاق الجغرافي اليمن. وهذا يعني ما حبيت أن أشارك فيه، ويعني نظرا لضيق الوقت وأعتذر من الجميع، ورحم الله هؤلاء الشهداء وشفى الله الجرحى، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا الأستاذ عرفات. This is Arafat Hamran, also with Rust Coalition, the human rights monitoring group in Yemen. It was more of a statement, but to summarize, he was basically calling for the activation of the organizations that already exist on the ground in Yemen, and to expedite the process of forming an independent team of investigations to take place as soon as possible. The next question we have Arib. I will unmute you right now. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. And with that, we will be closed, inshallah, afterwards.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to pass on my condolences to everyone who's sadly died in the fire. I just wanted to ask two questions. Number one, this crisis is not just something that happened overnight. It's been there for a few years now, and hundreds of Oromo people, as well as other individuals from East Africa, have been going to Yemen to try and get into Saudi Arabia. What would you like for the people who want to be resettled in another country? Because many of the individuals who've gone to Yemen don't want to go back to the countries of origin. They've been fleeing economic and also persecution in their own right. And my second question is, it's not just the Houthis, for example, who are also involved in Yemen, it's also the UN-backed government and Saudi Arabia. And I just wanted to ask if the organizations involved in this conference have considered contacting or attempting to kind of pressure the Saudi government to assist in this ongoing kind of situation. Thank you.
Do you direct your question to a specific person, or is it open to anybody? Man, who would like to answer this question? Mr. Jamal, would you like to take a stab at it?
وضح السؤال يا عرفة.
هو بيسأل، العفو انكم سوري، هو بيسأل عن موضوع توطين اللاجئين في بلدان ثالثة، لأنهم أغلب اللاجئين في اليمن لم يلجأوا إلى اليمن إلا بسبب معاناتهم في الداخل. وأيضا بذكر أنه طبعا الحوثيين هم ليسوا الوحيدين الذين يعني قاموا بمهاجمة أو بإضرار اللاجئين، وإذا في معنا أو أي جهة معها تواصل مع التحالف أو الحكومة الشرعية من أجل اللاجئين.
أنا أعتقد السؤال الأول ممكن يجاوب على الأخ جمال متعلق بإعادة التوطين. ممكن بالسؤال الثاني أخذ أنا جزء والآخر ياخذ جزء.
So he's saying, For the first question, he would like Mr. Jamal to speak about the resettling of refugees in third countries. And for the second question regarding different sides being a part of the problem, him and Mr. Riyadh will take part in answering the question. I will unmute you right now, Mr. Jamal. We still can't hear you. I'm requesting you to unmute.
All right, do you hear me now?
We hear you now, yes.
All right, thank you so much. Regarding the resettlement in different countries, the first problem is like people flee because they couldn't live in their own country. They couldn't live with their beloved ones, with their own families. You know, nobody would simply flee his own home and then die in fire like that is happening to Oromo. It's not only really like they are being burned in detention centers, and there were also cases where they were drawn into seas all over when they were trying to cross also to Europe and many other countries. So returning home for them is unsafe. That is why they flee basically. So the resettlement programs are, I think, can be sponsored by many Oromo communities around the globe. I think Canada can be one of those potential communities that can play a huge role. And there can be also European countries where we need assistance from the local authorities as well as international bodies to work with the Oromo communities. And we offer, I mean, the Oromo communities are very much willing to work on this with the community, the international organizations. So the biggest problem is the world is not that much responsive as we wish. We wanted to have these refugees to be resettled anywhere where they of their choice. But you know, like the world works, when you are powerful, people listen to you. When you are not, you don't get that much attention. But we are going to work with all the organizations which were here and which are not here also to provide them with the possibility of being resettled somewhere outside of the countries which are suffering. The second part, I think the problem in Yemen and the surrounding area is beyond what Oromos can do. It simply goes back to the people who are living over there. And the Oromos, as you see, have good problem even in their own country. So that part can be responded to maybe by the people of Yemen and the surrounding peoples more than us. Thank you so much.
Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay, so the second part of the question is Ustad Riyadh, Ustad Tawfiq عن
بالنسبة للسؤال الثاني
يا توفيق،
نعم.
أنا قبل الإجابة أنا أستأذنكم لأنه مرتبط بعمل آخر الآن. أتمنى عملا موفقا ونلتقي إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله. شكرا.
So Mr. Nabil is leaving. He is a Yemeni researcher on Yemen and the relationship between Yemen and North and the Horn of Africa. And thank you very much for your participation. We look forward to working with you as a part of this coalition, inshallah. تفضل أستاذ توفيق وأستاذ رياض.
طبعا هذا المؤتمر هو ركز بدرجة أساسية على الجريمة المحرقة اللي حدثت في العاصمة صنعاء وهي تحت سيطرة جماعة الحوثي. لكن هذا لا يعني على أن الأطراف الأخرى لا ترتكب انتهاكات بحق اللاجئين. نحن قبل 4 أشهر أصدرنا تقرير مستقل سميناه رأس العارة طريق المهاجرين الإثيوبيين إلى الجحيم. تحدثنا عن انتهاكات مروعة. هنالك شبكة كبيرة من المهربين تستغل هؤلاء اللاجئين ممتدة من إثيوبيا إلى المناطق اليمنية وبالذات في رأس العارة. وهنالك انتهاكات تمارس في أقسام الشرطة سواء في عدن أو في لحق. هنالك أيضا انتهاكات تمارس في الانتهاكات الأبرز في مناطق سيطرة الحوثي في رداع في صعدة، وفي شهادة موثقة سيصدر فيها تقرير. وأيضا قصة التحالف، أيضا هذه انتهاكات وثقتها منظمات كبيرة خاصة بعد دخولها من المملكة العربية السعودية. فالانتهاكات هي موجودة من كل الأطراف، لكن تظل الانتهاكات التي تمارسها جماعة الحوثي هي الأبرز والأعنف على هؤلاء اللاجئين. هنالك مهاجرين وصلوا إلى مأرب. أمس ربما شاهدنا احتفالية في مأرب بأن تم استقبالهم استقبال حسن وتوظيفهم في مثل هذه الأعمال. لكن هذا لا يمنع كما قال الزميل أنه في انتهاكات، لكن كما قلت لك الأبرز اليوم هي موجودة تحت سيطرة الحوثي. هنالك استغلال ممنهج من أجل يأخذون اللاجئين من كل مكان، من أجل يتصلوا بأهاليهم إلى إثيوبيا، من أجل أن يدفعوا مبلغ مالي قدره 1500 ريال سعودي أكثر أقل في هذا الخصوص.
He is saying that this particular conference is dedicated to this specific atrocity, but it by no means that the other sides are not committing violations. The Saudi-led coalition in the government has committed its fair share of violations, and they're still ongoing. But if we are proportionally speaking, the Houthis have statistically committed the majority of the atrocities. He also mentioned that the organization of which he is the executive director, SAM for Rights and Liberties, produced a report last year called Ras al-Arra, the Road to Hell, which basically documents the road that in the way that Ethiopian migrants and others end up in Yemen and all the suffering that they endure. So Riyad, the second part of the question.
اوكي يا انا حاب اضيف حاجه انه اولا نشوف في مساله اللاجئين ولجوءهم الى اليمن، هي العمليه ما كانتش تحصل قبل الانقلاب الحوثي مثل هذه الانتهاكات، لكن اليمن عموما بلد فقير ولا يستطيع ان يستقبل الكم الهائل من هؤلاء اللاجئين. صحيح اليمن موقع ومصادق على هذه الاتفاقيه، لكن اللاجئين كانوا انفسهم ايضا يعتبروا اليمن هي ترانزيت عبور، ومنها يتهربوا الى السعوديه ودول الخليج. هذا رقم واحد. رقم اثنين، مثل ما قال توفيق، كانت هناك شبكات تهريب موجوده كثيره ومشتركين فيها من كل الاطراف، لكن دعنا نوضح هنا انه من اجل حل هذه المشكله يجب ان يكون هناك 3 أو 4 دول اقل حاجه مشتركه. اليمن ما تقدرش تحل هذه المشكله، يجب ان تتدخل اثيوبيا ايضا، يجب ان تتدخل جيبوتي واريتريا واليمن ويحلوا هذه المشكله باعتبار انه مشكله مشتركه. ثالثا، هذه الانتهاكات حدثت في بعض المحافظات مثل صنعاء. لماذا؟ لأنها تسيطر عليها جماعة الحوثي، وهذا معروفة، هي مارست كل الانتهاكات. حدثت مثل ما قال زميلنا توفيق انه في عدن وفي لحج، وهذه المناطق لا تخضع للسلطة الشرعية بكاملها، ويوجد فيها جماعات مثل الانتقالي، وهي ايضا تمارس الانتهاكات تعتبر خارج اطار الدولة. في مأرب رأينا الوضع مختلف مثل ما قال توفيق، تم ادماج هؤلاء المهاجرين، تم استقبالهم، تم ايجاد فرص عمل لهم في صندوق النظافه والتحسين، ما كانش في عليهم هذه الانتهاكات. ونحن يعني مثلا انا بالنسبه لي كشخص رياض عشت بصنعاء 35 سنه، ما شفت يوم انه واحد، ما سمعت يوم من هذه الانتهاكات تمارس على اللاجئين، عكس بعد الانقلاب. وبالتالي هذه المشكله معضله كبيره. اليمن بلد فقير، ما تقدرش توجه الكم الهائل من هؤلاء اللاجئين. هم يعرفوا بان اليمن عباره عن دوله ترانزيت لا يقيمون فيها. كان كل العبء اللي تتحمله كانت منظمة الهجرة الدولية، إضافة إلى منظمة الأمم المتحدة لشؤون اللاجئين. وبالتالي هذه الانتهاكات حدثت في مناطق الحوثيين، وحدثت في مناطق الشرعية التي يسيطر عليها جماعات مسلحة وجماعات خارج إطار الدولة. العكس مختلف. أنا لا أدافع هنا عن الدولة، لكن لاحظت أمس ولاحظ ولدينا تقارير جاءت من مأرب عكس هذا الكلام.
So he's just reiterating what Mr. Tawfiq was saying, that so anti-refugee violations were never committed to this magnitude under the government before the war, but the war has exacerbated the problem. There are obviously many warring sides who are not affiliated to the legitimate government, but this is not to defend the legitimate government. Obviously, the Saudi-led coalition has again committed its fair share. And he spoke about that there needs to be a cooperation between Yemen, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Somalia, because Yemen alone cannot solve this refugee problem. Yemen is known as to be the most impoverished country in the Middle East. It's a poor country that is mostly used as transit by these refugees. They don't come to Yemen to settle, but to go to other countries. Many reports have documented this specific statement, and also the fact that the war and the situation right now has made it even harder for them to get out of Yemen, and that's why a lot of them end up getting stuck there. This specific atrocity was committed in the capital of Yemen, which has been under the de facto rule of the Houthis, which is why it's being highlighted in this event. And it's the worst and biggest in magnitude since literally the beginning of the war. It might be the worst actually atrocity or the single day worst massacre since the beginning of the 6 years of war. And he also mentioned how in Ma'rib, the refugees were welcomed and given job opportunities that they have been rejected of in other cities. And Ma'rib is known to be one of the few cities under the legitimate government.
Thank you, Hussam. Thank you to our speakers for answering the questions. That concludes the Q&A section. And thank you to our speakers for giving their statements. Thank you to everyone who's attended. We appreciate you joining us for this press conference. And we're grateful for the opportunity to have been able to share information and to share the truth about the incident that took place in Yemen. I'll hand over to Hussam to give some closing words, and then that will conclude our press conference.
Thank you very much, Angatu, for the amazing moderation. Thank you to all our speakers. Obviously, this is the first step in a journey towards achieving justice for the Oromo and all the refugees in Yemen and beyond. This is the beginning, and we're planting the seed of a coalition of Yemeni and Oromo and hopefully more international organizations that will keep fighting for the rights of refugees in Yemen and demand their immediate release. On behalf of Bridges for Yemen, I would like to thank all these organizations and everybody who attended. We will be more than happy to provide you with the contacts of all these organizations, all the reports that were mentioned throughout the interview. The Facebook Live is going to be up on Facebook. We will be sending a press release to all the media and all the press contacts that we have. And if you have any questions, contact us. And with that, we will be closing this live. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.